for Buccaneers Insider Live. We had one yesterday, and guess what? We're also going to have one tomorrow. We are just making sure you guys have all of the Buccaneers content that you could possibly want going into this playoff game, making sure that everybody is all caught up. So as we give people a chance to start submitting some of the questions on the Facebook page, we got a lot actually we could talk about, even just that has happened since yesterday. First, let's go ahead and start with the Hall of Fame news.
Yeah, it's really, really good news. It's not surprising. It's still a great accomplishment, but it's not surprising anymore that John Lynch has made it through to the finalist stage of the selection process. In this case, for the class of 2021 for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It's the 8th straight year that this has happened. And that in and of itself tells me that the voters on the selection committee do think he's a Hall of Fame caliber player. They wouldn't keep making him a finalist and giving themselves a chance to put him in. But the even better news is that Rondé Barber joined him. This is his 4th year of eligibility. And quite frankly, I've been surprised the last 3 years, especially the last couple. Maybe the first year wasn't a big surprise, but I've been surprised the last 3 years that he didn't make it through to the finalist stage, but now he has. So the Buccaneers have 2 of the 15 finalists. And they're both very, very well deserving. We've obviously stated their cases many times here and in other places, but you got to make that step before you get all the way to the Hall of Fame. And this year, instead of voting on the day before the Super Bowl in the host city, which is the traditional way, they're going to hold a virtual meeting on January 19th. So we may find out even sooner than that.
Yeah, that is just such great news. They're both so deserving. And I mean, man, of all the years, the fact that it would be here in Tampa, it's like they've been deserving any year, and we'd be happy for them to get in any year. But if it could happen this year, that would just be so special.
Yeah, originally I thought 2020 would be the perfect year for Rondé Barber to go in, number 20. His number, nobody else wears that number anymore for the Buccaneers. So, but now I agree with you. It'd be very fitting for one or both to get in.
That would be incredible. And Richard had asked, if you had to pick one, who gets in, Lynch or Rondé?
That's a really good question. And I want to make sure that it's understood that when I'm saying this, I'm not saying that one player is better or more deserving than the other. Just circumstantially, I feel like this could be the year for John Lynch. And believe me, I understand that I've said that before on a couple other occasions. But you look at the first thing you have to do is understand that it's a maximum of 5 of those 15. And you have to look at the first-year candidates and guys that are probably going to make it in the first year. So how many spots are they going to take up? Well, Peyton Manning is obvious. Clearly, he'll get in the first year. And I think there's a very good chance that Calvin Johnson and I'm blanking on the other one right now. Charles Woodson will also get in. They seem like first ballot types. So you got 2 spots there. And looking at all the other players that are eligible, like some Torrey Holtz and Alan Fanekas and guys like that, he seems just as good of a choice as any of them. So I do believe that the Hall of Fame committee takes opportunities to clear up log jams or to take care of a guy they've been trying to get in, but just couldn't make him top 5 before when they have a chance. And so I'm thinking this could be John's chance. And I'd love to see Rondé go in, but he might have to wait a couple of years.
Yep. I can understand that logic for sure. So hopefully, this is the year that at least one of them can get in. All right. Well, we also had some exciting other award news, not quite Hall of Fame level, but still pretty exciting for kicker Ryan Succop.
Well, hey, yeah, those awards along the way help you get in the Hall of Fame eventually. And the Buccaneers have had a lot of these Player of the Week awards this year. Ryan Succop won it for the 2nd time. He had 14 points, made all 8 of his kicks, which was big because the Bucs offense was pretty much moving the ball at will. They scored on all 5 of their first half drives against Atlanta, but they were having a little trouble in the red zone. So they had to kick field goals, and he made all of them, which allowed the Bucs to take that 23-10 halftime lead and then hold on and kind of pull away at the end. So it's a great award for Ryan. It's actually the 7th time he's won it in his career, a couple times with KC and a couple times with Tennessee. He is the first Buccaneer, however, to have won the Special Teams Player of the Week award twice in one season, which I was surprised to find when I looked it up because I figured Martin Gramatica, who did win it multiple times, just never won it twice in one season.
Wow, that's a really interesting stat there. I love that. Well, congratulations to Ryan. And I know that Bucs fans have loved his consistency this year. I mean, it is really great to have that kind of confidence that your kicker's getting the Player of the Week award right before the playoffs. That's a pretty great.
He made 28 of 31, and I think something like 25 of his last 26 or something like that. That's awesome. You're feeling very good about him.
Yeah, that's great. And finally, we just wanted to, before we get to these questions, figure out what all we learned from some of the press conferences yesterday morning, from the practice that happened. It was essentially a walkthrough, but what different players and coaches said that gave us some insight into, especially things like health, but just overall team things.
Well, first the walkthrough, and that's an important distinction because and the teams do this generally when they have an accelerated schedule. Since we have a Saturday game, you're practicing on Tuesday, what you would normally do on Wednesday, and so on. But 2 days after the game, the last game isn't a lot of time for players to recover, so they generally don't do a full speed practice. What they do is a walkthrough. Most notably, Mike Evans and Carlton Davis did take part in the walkthrough, which is a good sign because a walkthrough is you line up how you're going to run the plays you're choosing to use on Saturday, and then you walk through them. And if those guys are taking part in them, that means the club is hoping, has, some optimism that they'll be out there. Otherwise, they wouldn't bother to put them in the practice for what you're going to do on the game. However, the actual injury report is based upon a full speed practice. So when you walk through, you have to estimate what would have happened if you'd gone full speed. And the Bucs said that Carlton and Mike would not have practice, which isn't a setback or anything. It was always a target of Thursday for Mike. So it's not bad news. I think it's actually kind of good news, but it's not anything certain yet. As for the press conferences, I think the biggest, probably the best statement anybody made was Bruce Arians saying, we don't think we're playing a 7-9 Washington team. We think we're playing a 4-1 Washington team because that's what they are under Alex Smith. And it's a good point.
All right. Well, now let's get into some of these questions. Jameer, I think is how you say it, said, how do you think Minter will do in the middle in place of Devin White?
Well, based on this last game and the 3 games that he played in White's absence early last year, I think he'll do pretty good. I mean, we saw that he can do all of the things that you want that position to do in this defense. He can rush the passer a little bit if you need him to. So that element of that blitz up the middle that White has done so well this year is still there. I'm not going to say there aren't many inside linebackers that can blitz like Devin White. So let's not go that far, but Minter can also range around the field to make tackles on rushing plays, and he even covered pretty well down the field. So he's a solid guy who knows the defense backward and forward, and has a ton of experience with Bruce Arians, and played pretty well last week. So I think he can do just fine.
And Greg asked, do you think Auclair or Hudson will get activated this week, or do you think they will want to use an O lineman to help in pass protection?
Well, I think they'll probably do Auclair would be my guess. That's what they did last week. And obviously with this ferocious Washington line, I think you're going to want your blocking tight end a little bit more. You could still use that extra offensive lineman as a tight end. It's kind of 6 of one, half dozen of another, or you could, you might have some jumbo packages where you're using both of them. So, but again, as I said yesterday, even against a pass rush like this, you have to remember the head coach that's running things, and Bruce Arians, even against tough pass rushes, doesn't like to max protect that much. He likes to put players out into routes.
And Richard asked, are you concerned that it's a night game considering how those have gone for us this year?
Well, I mean, I would be if I thought there was any particular reason for that little mini trend. I don't think there is. There's really not much sense to it. I think it was just coincidental that the Buccaneers kept playing their worst games in the evening. So no, it doesn't really concern me at all.
John asked, when will the Bucs fly to Washington? And also, do we think Rojo's carries will increase this week?
Well, to start back, okay, they'll fly up on Friday, of course. They always fly the day before. I don't know the exact time and probably wouldn't give it out if I did. But as for Rojo's carries, it's all just how the game unfolds. This is still a passing team, and Rojo looked great in the last game. And I know Bruce Arians wants to use him and was certainly encouraged by how he played. But we're going to pass first for the most part in most games, and then see how the game develops. And that usually is what indicates how many carries that your primary running back gets. So if the Bucs have a nice lead in the second half, yeah, he'll get a lot more carries, I think.
Bruno had a question. He's watching from Brazil, which is
cool.
awesome.
Right.
And he said, we know that Devin White won't be able to play Saturday, but would he be able to play the next week if we win?
Yeah. I think that's the presumption. In fact, Bruce Arians wasn't thrilled, I think it was the way he put it, that we drew a Saturday game instead of a Sunday game, because he thought there might be a chance of White coming off that list. For all we know, he's ready to go right now. It's just the protocol says 10 days. So he would be, assuming that he is healthy and ready, there's nothing that would stop him from coming off that list in time for a second round game if the Buccaneers get past Washington.
And Curtis asked, what are the odds of a Buccaneer home game in the playoffs?
Well, they're not high, and they never are for any wild card team. And you'll know, at least for the next round, before the Buccaneers even play, because the Rams and Seahawks will play on Saturday afternoon. And if the Seahawks win, then the Buccaneers definitely won't have a home game in round 2. They would go to either Green Bay if New Orleans beats Chicago, or Seattle if Chicago beats New Orleans. If the Rams win, then it remains a possibility, because if the Rams and the Buccaneers win on Saturday and then the Bears win on Sunday, then all 3 wildcard teams won. And as the highest wildcard team, the lowest wildcard team would, which would be Chicago, would go to Green Bay. And as the highest wildcard team, we would host the Rams. So yeah, it's possible. And then even if it doesn't happen this week, if at least one of the Rams or the Bears wins and the Bucs win this weekend, there remains a possibility for the NFC Championship game in Tampa, but somebody's going to have to knock off Green Bay for that to happen.
Yes, that's true. All right. We also had a question. Do you see there being more quick slants to someone like AB because of going against this pass rush?
So get rid of the ball quickly.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it depends on how well we're holding up, because we are rightfully talking about how good that Washington pass rush is and star-studded with first-round picks. But remember that we have a very good offensive line, and I think they're really hitting their stride as the season ended. I mean, if you watch this last game against Atlanta, I know Atlanta doesn't have the same defensive line, but they have some talented defenders as well. Tom Brady had a lot of time to throw, a lot of time, and that allows you to look downfield. So I would think what you have is every play has a number of possibilities, right? So you have your chance to hit the ball downfield if you have time. Otherwise, you get rid of it more quickly to somebody underneath. I don't think you necessarily call more slants because you're terrified of their pass rush.
Okay, well, that's going to do it for us on this edition of Buccaneers Insider Live, presented by Miller Lite. Thanks, as always, for joining us. And again, we'll actually be back tomorrow morning to answer more of your questions and give even more updates from the practice that happens today. So we'll see you then.